Joining me now is Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary and author of the upcoming book, Leading America. Sean, thank you for being here tonight. Your thoughts as you saw your former boss leave the White House, go up the steps of Marine One, and I thought it was an interesting moment. It caught my eye, and I heard Charlie Hurt mention it as well. He sort of gave a tap, tap, tap to the top of the steps before he got on the helicopter to leave, sort of a like, everything's going to be okay kind of move, and sending that signal to the rest of America, too.
Yeah, well, first, I'm glad to be with you, and it's too bad that it's on such fortunate circumstances, and I join everyone else in sending my thoughts and prayers to not just the president, but the First Family, Hope Hicks, and frankly, everyone in this country and around the world who's had to deal with this. Look, Martha, I've toured Walter Reed. I've seen the facility that the president's going at. It's, as Kristen Fisher said, it's extensive. It's meant to serve as a sort of an alternative West Wing where he can have meetings, staff can meet with him. Obviously, because of the nature of this particular virus, I'm not sure how much interaction he's going to have with staff, but it's almost like an Air Force One kind of situation where an Air Force One is a floating White House. This facility that was built at Walter Reed allows the president to completely continue to function and execute his responsibilities and duties as president of the United States. On top of that, obviously, he's going to get the finest care that these military and medical professionals know how.
Yeah, I mean, that is the kind of thing that makes you feel glad to be an American when you see the sort of facilities that we can provide for our president and the place that he's headed. And we certainly hope that all of the knowledge that they have to bring to bear for this case will help the president to recover very quickly. You know, one of the things that started almost immediately, Sean, in some of the sniping that was happening when the president announced his own diagnosis, was that, you know, who can we trust? You know, we've had a series of people at the White House, they even named you, who haven't told us the truth. You know, what do you say about what we've seen today? Because there was a long period of quiet, but it all started, we need to point out, with the president's own tweet of his own diagnosis. And then we just heard from him moments ago. What do you say about all that?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that he was the one that got out in front of this and explained what was going on and how he was doing and how the First Lady were doing. So I think that was helpful because it set the right tone. There wasn't a bunch of leaks that came out. The president was straightforward with the American people. Look, Martha, I understand that we're in election season. We're 30-something days away from the next election. There's plenty of time to be political. Let's get through these next couple days and make sure that the president and the First Family get the medical care and the attention that they deserve and need so that we can continue to function as a country. If you like President Trump, get out there and vote for him. Make sure that we get 4 more years of these policies. But if you don't, you vote against him. But there's plenty of time to do that. We're Americans. Let's solve our problems at the ballot box. But tonight, you know, we should all be rooting for our president to do well. And there's a place and an opportunity if you want to change horses in the upcoming election to do that. But tonight, let's come together as Americans, pray for our government, pray for our First Family, make sure that they know that regardless of what stripe we're on, there's times of national tragedy that we can come together in crisis and be together as one. And that's why I think the world continues to look at us as the greatest nation on earth.
You know, the president's a worker. He likes to work almost all the time. I mean, you know, occasionally he takes some time off to play golf and do some things that he likes to do, which everybody understands is a good way to sort of let off some steam. But I'm just trying to picture him holed up in this suite in Walter Reed with not a lot of people around him. And I'm hoping that that's going to make him get better really quickly, because my guess and my hope is that he's going to get really antsy if he has to stay there for too long, Sean.
You know, every time that you get sick, whether it's a cold, the flu, or obviously coronavirus, I think the first thing every doctor tells you is drink lots of fluids and get tons of rest. Well, he may do the fluids part, but I don't know that this president knows how to rest. He's the Energizer Bunny, man. The guy just keeps going and going and going. I think he may be working out of Walter Reed, but he's going to continue to work on behalf of the American people. He's going to make those phone calls. He's going to do everything he can to the extent he's able to keep up with his schedule, the phone calls, and I guarantee you the staff's going to, you know, realize that real quick, that they might think that he's off. You joked about it, but the only time as press secretary that I knew I had a few minutes is when he would take off to go to the golf course. You knew that he had an hour or two, but that's it. He's up first thing in the morning and goes till late at night, and I think it's going to be the same thing to the extent that, you know, in between these medical appointments and tests, but he's going to keep fighting for the American people.
What happens to the campaign at this moment, Sean?
You know, Martha, that's an excellent question. I think there's obviously an immediate pause, not just on the president's side, but you've seen the Biden campaign talk about taking down their ads. But one thing is for certain tonight, I think there's just a big X factor, both in terms of governance and policy, and then the political side, the campaign side. Until we understand the extent of the president's symptoms and whether it's just a short-term thing or whether he needs additional care, there's going to be a lot of pause about what happens going forward. But I can tell you right now, for at least the next 72, 96 hours, I think we're going to see a slowdown. What it looks like after that, whether Vice President Mike Pence picks up the mantle and really starts to do a lot more, is one idea. Staff can do a lot of stuff. But the campaigns will go on, the door-to-door knocking, the phone calls, the emails. The campaign is going to keep moving forward. The question becomes, to what extent does the president do events, does calls, does videos, whatever. But I think you're going to see the campaign continue to move forward. They'll raise money. They'll do all of the things that a campaign does in these final few days logistically and mechanically to make sure that they put President Trump back in office for 4 more years. But I think that the public piece of this, as far as he's concerned, whether it's a rally or a speech or an appearance, may take the sidelines for the next 7 to 10 days. I think that the first question that's going to happen, obviously, is whether or not that second debate that's just at that 2-week window continues. My guess right now is they will, but it's going to be a town hall. So that's sort of a different dynamic because you're going to interact with people the way that you wouldn't have when, Chris Wallace did his the other day, where it's just one moderator and 2 candidates. So I think we might see some sort of alteration, if you will, or some additional precautions being taken. But you're going to see after that 2 weeks that, there won't be any more additional issues of spreading the virus. And so I think that will be the first thing that kind of is dealt with. But aside from that, the campaign's going to move forward in all other aspects.
But Sean, when you look at, I think a lot of people really respect the way that the president has forged ahead and had rallies and, held most of them outside. There were some issues with some of the others. But how does what happened now change that whole messaging of, go ahead, live your life, don't lock down, everyone else should go back to work, and him sort of, trying to demonstrate that and doing it mostly without a mask. We saw him with a mask on tonight. How does the message on this whole story change, Sean?
It's a really interesting question that you're asking, because I know, there's times when a person in your life, a friend, a loved one, a family member, deals with a particular illness or a disease or a tragedy, and that sort of impacts how you look at that issue going forward, that disease, that virus, what have you. And so it'll be interesting to me how the president's demeanor, tone, tenure, and style change after personally having been part of seeing this, not just himself, but obviously watching the First Lady deal with it as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that addresses. But obviously, the more that we continue to adhere to the advice of medical professionals, the better. We've got to deal with this. But what today proves, if anything, is that every one of us remains vulnerable to this disease, and we've got to continue to adhere to the medical advice, if not just for us, but for our family members, our friends, our fellow Americans. We need to do what we can to eradicate this virus as soon as possible. And if one little thing does that, then we should do it. And I think, frankly, the president will be, obviously, I think, much more in tune with that.
Yeah, I mean, the president has lost at least one close friend to this virus, and he has overseen an enormously accelerated vaccine process, the likes of which the country has never seen, probably driven in part by that loss and the loss of so many other Americans that we have watched over the course of this. Sean Spicer, thank you. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Martha.